Welcome to the Karma Yoga Center Full Moon Report. This forecast is going to cover a span of about 2 weeks, the important things that I see upcoming. And I would say that the overarching theme of this particular forecast is about balancing dualities or polarities as the sun is moving into Libra on Saturday, the 22nd. We come into the balance of the masculine and feminine, the solar, the lunar, the dark and the light, and all of that is reflected in the rest of the astrology that I'm going to showcase as well. So, balancing polarities. Let's start with a big one, not the full moon, I'll get to that in a minute, but another big aspect that I think is crucial for us to understand at this point is the planet Mars, who has gone direct and is in the sign of Aquarius. And it is nestled up closely to a lesser known planet or planetary body by the name of Black Moon Lilith. Black Moon Lilith represents the dark feminine or the sacred feminine. And if I could give an explanation of how she exists in our astrology, it would be as if you and I were holding hands crossed, and then we spin each other around. And we use that traction between each other to hold each other in space in centrifugal force. So the moon is holding hands like that with Lilith, and that is how she holds herself in orbit with this planetary gravitational pull off of Lilith. Even though we can't see her, her energy is there. And so she's very mysterious to us, and the sacred feminine has always been kind of a mysterious word in general, a mysterious concept for us, so it's challenging for us to wrap our brain around this. But I think it's important that we do it this time. So the sacred feminine, or the dark feminine, is nestled up right next to the masculine warrior of Mars. And there's a dance going on between them as they move back and forth, retrograding and going direct, and retrograding and going back to direct. They've been dancing across this skyline with us, and the dance has been somewhat, at times, could be tumultuous, almost like a boxing match, the way boxers have to use their fancy footwork with each other squaring off, but it could also have been a very sensual and beautiful tango dance between the two energies. And so they're right now back together again after coming apart. Now they're together again and dancing very closely. So this is that polarity piece, the dark feminine and the warrior-like masculine doing this dance. And there's an element of surrender necessary in a beautiful tango, and an element of trust between the two parties that needs to happen in order for the dance to play out. So that would be a key ingredient right now, is to trust that part of yourself, allowing you to surrender into the dip, or to be strong enough to hold up that energy of the feminine if need be. If you're not familiar with Black Moon Lilith, it's a part I think our society needs to step into, an aspect of understanding that we need to evolve into a little clearer, come into clarity around her. So take a dive for yourself and study up on Black Moon Lilith and see what you can find about your own sacred feminine. All the astrological elements that we talk about in these astrology reports are really reflections of what's going on inside of ourselves. As above, so below, as the saying goes. So your own sacred feminine is wanting to dance with your warrior-like masculine and have this beautiful tango. So trust this energy that you're feeling inside yourself, however that is showing up. If it's sensuality coming into a stronghold, if it's the surrendering and letting go and letting somebody else lead for a change, just let that play out and trust the situation. So that's one piece. Another aspect that I want to talk to is the name of the report, the full moon. The full moon is in Aries, which is the home of Mars, which is a battleground of beginning, fire starting energy. So there's a lot of duality right there, because the moon is this sensitive, voluptuous, creative goddess, and she's standing on the battlefield of Aries. And then right next to her is Chiron, the wounded healer. So they are on the battlefield of Aries together, these two sensitive creatures, and these are energies, again, that are within ourselves. So this full, voluptuous, creative goddess and our childhood wounds, and the moon energy is also our inner child. So these are two potentially childlike energies coming together, very watery, very emotional, and they're sitting on a hotbed of fire that's ready to just ignite and charge at anything, at any time, because the Aries energy is somewhat immature. It's a beginning fire. It's ready to roar and go. It's super excited. Think like a teenage boy. It's much like that. So these two goddess energies, Chiron is not necessarily a goddess. In fact, Chiron's a centaur, and he's half man and half horse. But it's he's come into understanding his sacred feminine, and so he's balanced his energies. Would be a good way to put it. One thing I want to note about these two key players in this report, the moon and Chiron are facing right off to the sun and Mercury. On the opposite side of the wheel, they're looking at the sun. So here's another duality. The moon's on this side and the sun's on this side. The moon is in Aries, the warrior, the I am. And the sun just is moving on the 22nd into the sign of Libra, which is we are. It's the relationship sign. It's the coming together sign. So the moon, the sensitive moon, is in I am warrior, and the sun, the brilliant, big, bold, bright sun, is in the we are. And they're facing off to each other. Another duality. Also on that 22nd, of course, is the equinox. And that's the balance of the light and the dark. And as it moves into the sign of Libra, the sign of relationships, and the sign of equality in the scales and equilibrium, it's asking us, the universe is asking us to take a break for a moment and balance these big energies. Balance our masculine and feminine. Balance our dark and our light. Balance our lunar and our solar. Now the sun has got a friend right next to it as well. It's got its buddy Mercury. Mercury is our communicator, our expressor. It's the way that we get things told. And it's right next to the sun, which is big and bold. So on the shadow side of that, the potential for big, bold expression is there. That can be a great thing sometimes, like making a report. It's a great time for the sun and Mercury to be in conjunction to each other. But sometimes that Mercury-Sun conjunction is too much, and we need to learn to keep our big mouths shut. So just have awareness of those two energies together. Use it for the light side of that focus and not let it go into the dark shadowy with too much said. And then Chiron and the moon on the opposite side over there in Aries, those two together have that nurturing, mothering potential of the moon, the sensitivity, the introspection to heal some of those deeper wounds that we have. So those two could work together. An interesting piece to play out is the moon is also known as Diana in Roman mythology. And Diana is the goddess of the hunt. And she pulls back an arrow when she's shooting. That's her weapon of choice. And so is the centaur Chiron. He carries a bow and arrow. That's his weapon of choice. And they're both excellent markspeople. Markswoman, marksman. And so I feel like this is a great time, if they're in that warrior playing field of Aries, to use, instead of aggression or harm with their prowess of power, but instead to pull back that arrow and shoot the arrow of their creativity, of their sensitivity, of their deep understanding about the internal wound, and send it over to the other side and let Mercury and the sun be pierced with that understanding of of the deep sensitivities we need to have around our wounds. And then that could help the Sun and Mercury express what we need to say about our wounds from long ago or even most recent wounds, and let those two work with each other instead of being in the battlefield opposing each other. So those are two aspects. And then a third one that I want to talk about today is the goddess Venus. And she's in planetary form going into the underworld, and we call that retrograde. So Venus goes retrograde around the 1st of October, and she is going to be in the sign of Scorpio when she goes into the underworld. And Scorpio is the energy of death, of merging, of transformation, of sensuality, of sexuality. And Venus is the goddess of beauty, abundance, love, and she's taking a little hiatus, going to retreat into the dark side, into the womb, into the cave, into the soul of the earth, and let herself rejuvenate. All the retrograde words there, all RE words come into play at this time. Reflect, reinvent, perhaps. And so for us, that could mean a chance for taking our feminine energy that we've been kind of grappling with in that tango over there with Mars and Black Moon Lilith, and taking it into a deeper introspection and letting ourselves understand it a little more. Just like I said, we were entering the fall equinox, that's also another goddess mythology of Persephone going into the underworld, just like Venus, her goddess sister, is doing at this time. They both journey down. Perhaps you could say it's like the home of where Lilith would reside. They're going down into that mother energy to nurture themselves. Persephone is the daughter of Demeter, and Demeter had to give up her daughter for half the year. And when Demeter is the earth goddess, and when Persephone goes into the underworld, the leaves fall off the trees, and the colors turn to the orange and the burnt and the death colors, and she cries until her daughter comes back in the spring. Persephone rises from the other side of the underworld. So this is a time for a little bit of reflection and perhaps grieving some old energies and letting them come to pass and die off. And it's a time for us to reinvent and reconfigure ourselves, especially around the areas that I mentioned that Scorpio is in charge of. Reinvent yourself around money, reinvent yourself around your ideas of who you are as a woman, or as with your feminine energies. The men have that feminine energy too. Reinvent yourself around your sexuality or your sensuality, or take a time out for reflection on that and see where you are. Maybe your sexuality or sensuality has been in hiatus too long, and it's time to shake things up. But at any rate, Venus is going down for us to have that time to look inside and see about our feminine energy. Nestled close but not right next to Venus and Scorpio is the big daddy guru Jupiter. And Jupiter is, in mythology, her father, and he is the overseeing, overarching force, the teacher, the guru. He has big, expansive energy. And as she goes into the underworld, he's overseeing the whole situation and giving her expansive room to grow and search and feel, as that is also happening in not only the myth, but for us as well. So as you go into your own introspection, your own reflection, your own understanding of your feminine energy, know that there's a higher guiding force governing and protecting and looking out after you in that Jupiter sense of the way. Jupiter is a big planet with a lot of love for all of us, and that energy is right there by Venus. Okay, the final aspect I want to talk about is Saturn, considered probably another big father figure in the planetary world. He's Father Time, or Cronus in mythology, and he is also the Lord of Karma, and he's also the governor, if you will, of law in our physical world. And so Saturn is in his home field of Capricorn, which is natural law and centered sign, and so it's very stable, it's very grounded, and Saturn's home there, and he feels very strong there right now. He's very empowered, and he is squaring both the sun and the moon, so another polarity. And he is saying to them, as Lord of Karma, check yourself. He's being the referee in a tennis match between the two, and he's saying check, or I don't even know tennis talk, but he's saying that's out or that's in, and this is fair and that's not fair. And if we are playing unfairly and not abiding by the karmic laws, then he's the one who doles out the karmic spankings. But on the same hand, if we are playing fair and we are being a good team player in a lot of ways, then he's the one who hands out the trophy and the rewards for that fair play. So he's squaring to the moon, which is our sensitive side, and that karmic energy could come up if we have a pattern of being oversensitive, over dramatizing. If our wound flares up and we play victim or martyr too much, there could be some karmic spankings doled out for that. And conversely, if our moon energy is being creative and luminous, and we're nurturing and caregiving and honoring our wound and taking care of it, we could get the rewards doled out for that. And then same on the other side of the playing field, he's looking at the sun, and he's saying, are you shining brightly in all the right ways? Are you taking care of that outward expression of yourself? Are you being fake? Are you being real? And letting ourselves be who we are. That is part of that judgment, because he's great at judgment, Saturn. That judgment comes down and he passes the sentence, whether we are to be in our sunlight or maybe we need a little time out from that. And also, he's squaring those two little friends of the sun and moon, Chiron with the moon and Mercury with the sun. So they're also getting a little karmic reflection as well at this time. Anytime there's a square, it means a little bit of a challenge. So Saturn is challenging our karmic notions about our masculine and our feminine, about our dark and our light, and about that solar lunar energy within us. All right, so that's a lot. That's wrapping up here with the two extremes. Happy birthday to all the Libras, and I hope that you find balance with the masculine and feminine. Do a little tango dance with your sacred feminine. Let your masculine Mars hold up and be strong, and may the sun shine upon you